Welcome to the Practice Profit System podcast. Do you own a cash-based practice? Are you looking to start one? Tired of working endless hours and still not making enough money? Want to fire your insurance company? Then you're going to love our podcast. Each episode is full of insights and proven strategies to grow your practice to 7 figures and more, allowing you to take more time off, make more money, and no longer have to take insurance reimbursements. Plus, get a free copy of my book, The Anatomy of a 7-Figure Medical Practice, where I detail my entire journey to creating my own 7-figure practice. Just go to www.srpmedicalmarketing.com/book. You just pay $7.95 in shipping and handling, and you'll also get over $1,197 in free bonuses. That's www.srpmedicalmarketing.com/book. Now, on to our show.
Hey everybody, it's Matt Galogli with the Practice Profit System. I'm here today with Tayna Oliver, and we are going to be discussing how to operate at peak performance regardless of what life throws at you. Now, I met Tayna when we were down at an event in Miami, and I heard her speak, and I went, bam, my peeps need to hear her. So, Tayna, before we get started in this, what we're going to do, we're going to talk about like mindset, and we're going to talk about a lot of really cool things today. You're going to learn a lot of things, I think, that you from a different approach that you haven't heard before. But let's start at the beginning. Tayna, how did you get started in this space?
Well, Matt, thank you so much for having me on. And for those of you listening, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. I got into being an executive coach and teaching this stuff because I needed it. And typically what we teach is what we need. When we teach something, we learn it times 10. Mm-hmm. So we're excited about it. But I came from a space of addiction. I came from a family lineage of addicts. And, you know, there was multiple points in my life that had inspired different, I say, creational spaces or birthing spaces, like birthing of a business or birthing of a book or all of that stuff. But more of, I started my background with working specifically with the physical. And as I was overcoming my own addictions, I was like, there's so much more than just working out and eating healthy and getting quality sleep. Like I still feel like my body, even though my behaviors aren't acting out as the addict, I still feel imprisoned inside of my heart and inside of my cells where I'm constantly feeling anxious or depressed about still like urges and cravings. Mm-hmm. And so I started getting deeper into the work of healing and personal growth and development. And I just created a lane that I needed and then started sharing with other people. And it really changed their lives and got more mentors and coaches and certifications and degrees. And I'm always a student. So
let's talk about the physical side of this, because I find that rather fascinating coming from a family that is on my side that is steeped deep in addiction. Obviously, addiction can be any number of things. It can be food, it can be drugs, it can be alcohol, it can be sex.
You know, a lot of people think addiction is just like a substance abuse, but it can be an addiction to creating toxic patterns in relationships. It can be addicted to anger because that's how we operate. Because addiction just means a heavy level of attachment to something to help you get through pain.
That's really, really good. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you go through and you start changing your physicality. Why did you start there? Why did you start from the physical side to attack the addiction?
Well, to heal it, really. I'm not trying to attack. We don't really want to attack anything. Yeah. We want to lean into it and to really befriend it because it's a part of us, right? So if it's a part of me, I have to learn to accept it and then to use it as information. And when I felt, for me and most people, it's not always the case for everybody, but for me and most people, especially the people that are drawn to me, the physical help is our subconscious. And when we take care of our physical, getting deeper into the mental and the emotional becomes a lot more manageable. A lot of times people don't want to deal with pain or deal with past experiences or trauma because they don't feel strong enough to be able to go down that route. But when you begin to start taking care of your physical self, your physical realm, the physical body, and you build strength upon it and you find consistency that builds confidence, and that also creates more mental clarity. for you to be able to go down and, course correct whatever patterns, habits, behaviors you want to shape shift.
So are addictions sneaky? Are they usually hidden to us?
I mean, I can't speak for everybody because I don't focus in on that energy.
Mm-hmm.
Very heavy energy. I actually had a call the other day of a woman who is trying to break the cycle of alcoholism. And I couldn't, it's not my area of expertise. So I stay in my lane.
Yeah.
However, speaking on myself, getting back to the question you had mentioned of like, is it sneaky? I think we're just a lot of unaware of it. There's a lot of shame around it. There's a lot of secrecy around it. And most of the time we don't even realize we have a problem until it becomes too late. Because as I mentioned, when there's two reasons why people never move forward in living their best life, becoming their best self, operating at higher levels of consciousness. And it comes down to two things from my understanding: resistance and attachment. Mm. Addiction, as we talked about earlier, is attachment. Resistance is understanding. Typically, when you're in addiction, you resist and you're attached to something at the same time. You resist it because you don't understand, number one, that there's even a problem. Number two, you don't have the healthy tools to be able to go through it. And substance abuse, it is a tool. People don't realize, like overeating, drinking, it's just you don't understand there's different levels of addiction and attachment. Yeah. You can have a very little level of it, but still need that glass of wine every night, because you've had a long day. Well, maybe you can start going to a yoga class, or you can start to breathe through your emotions and start getting journaling, or, having other healthier outlets to help process whatever, you went through in your day. So those are like little examples of the biggest thing. As I say, 3 parts of transformation is number 1, self-honesty, being honest with yourself. That's the only person you have to be truthful to start off with. And so that leads to also self-awareness, because you can't be aware if you're not at least honest with you. And if you can't be honest with you, then you're not really living life, period. The second. Yeah. I mean, it's true. You're really not living, and you're not living in your truth. So you're always going to be miserable. You're always going to, be victim. You're always going to be just living hell on earth. I mean, it's an option, and why choose that route, right? Like, why do we want to go that route? The second is going to be curious about what's going on versus judging it. Because if you start judging yourself, you're going to shut any opportunity of a solution down. There will be no forward movement. But if you're curious about it and you're like, well, where did this come from? Where did I learn this from? Because it's a learned behavior. Where did I learn this tool from to help me find, this is the only tool I know to help me find relief through pain. Right. And then the third is to seek out solutions, like hire a coach, like start investing in your health, your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual health. And then it's kind of like those are the 3 guidelines I go through and teach people. So it's pretty helpful.
It's interesting. You mentioned 2 things that I talk about quite a bit, and one is resistance, right? Mm. So I'm a big believer. I don't know if you've ever read Stephen Pressfield's book, The War of Art.
I've heard of it.
You need to put it on your short. It's an annual read, at least for me. And resistance, he talks about, it's the resistance that prevents us from going to the thing that we're supposed to go to. My friends and I joke that if we don't have any resistance, then we're on the wrong path, right? It's when we have resistance that we come up against challenges that tells us that we're heading in the right direction. Because everybody on this podcast who listen, they know I believe in God. So we're going to just talk about it in that phase. But in that phase, those obstacles are coming to you as a way for you to overcome. That's the beauty of accomplishment. The second one you talked about is attachment. I think that's even bigger than resistance, because people are, I'm always fascinated listening to people who live under a dictatorship. I have a staff member who lives in Venezuela who's moving, right? But he's having a hard time because he's attached to his crappy life because it's what he knows, right? It's funny. Isn't it funny, Tayna, that the thing that we want to escape is actually the thing that gives us a tremendous amount of comfort?
Well, that's the difference between pain and suffering, Matt, is pain is real going through it, and suffering is optional. It's the choices we make every single day. And that's really what karma is. Karma is just cause and effect. What I do today is going to impact my tomorrow. Everything has a consequence, right? So it's the consequence is either desired or undesired. Because if you look up the true definition of consequence, it's not a negative outcome. It's just an outcome. But the thing is, typically we associate consequence with a negative connotation. It's just the outcome is either desired or undesired. And when you talked about like resistance and attachment, it's not bigger, it's just different, because those are two separate entities. Like those are completely two different ways of going down a solution-based like box, I guess, if you can say.
So do you always start with self-care when it comes to working with people? Is that kind of where you began, or is it just kind of more based on the individual?
I love that you asked this question. I mean, I love the questions you've asked so far, but this is just one of my favorite questions. The starting point for anybody is the most critical. I believe the best place to start, which I love healthy speed, and so do my clients, and even for myself, everybody who wants healthy speed, right? Like raise your hand, like heck yeah. Yeah. It's structure. Structure equals order, and lack of structure equals chaos. So the first thing, a lot of the ways that I believe in that have been tremendously helpful for me also, like excelling and elevating myself, my business, my life, has been about an adding mentality. Like, what can I add? And let me structure this so that I can have order. And then once I have order, I can start to tackle all these other things. And then, or the other things kind of work their way out of the system because there's no longer room for them in this like already overly full box. So structure is the first space. Just getting somebody on a food schedule, an exercise schedule, everything else is a plug-in. I kind of feel like when it comes to this line of work, it's really like a puzzle. We set up all the right pieces. Everything's even like a math equation. You just have these like blank plus blank plus blank equals the desired outcome. Right. And we just got to figure out together on this journey for somebody what the exact little like plugins are to give somebody a desired outcome for them to look, feel, and be, show up in their business and their life as their best self. Okay. So talk about self-care and habit. Let's talk a little bit about mindset. Now, people hear mindset and I think a lot of people glaze over because they've heard it a lot, right? How do you approach this concept of mindset? How do you get people to a place where they don't shut down on this topic and they're open to what you're sharing with them? I'm going to answer your question in a second. I was listening to an audiobook. I love listening to audiobooks. I've swapped out music for audiobooks when I get ready. Unless I'm listening to some type of like binaural beat. Have you heard of binaural beat? All the time. Yeah. Follow look up to them, work to them. Your cells are like jumping for joy. They're like happy when you're listening to these binaural beats. So I was listening to this audiobook by, I forget, I just got it. I found her by coincidence from a podcast, but not really coincidence, right? Because everything's on purpose. Yep. And she was talking about, I was like so intrigued in this that I just lost thought of what I was going to say. I do that sometimes because I say want to say 10 things at the same time. Yeah, well, look, ADD is a gift. It's not a curse. Okay. So you're in a safe place, right? Now, I know I'm always going to be honest. My doctor's doing heart surgery or replacing ACL and you forgot why you were there. This probably would be a bad thing. Mindset. There we go. Right? We're talking about mindset. I was like, shoot, I didn't want to ask you the question. Remember it. I didn't want to ask you the question again, but I literally my mind went blank because I actually remember the question. You actually think that? Yeah. She was talking about mindset when it came to money because it's a book on money and shame around money. Because everything holds an energetic, emotional state behind it. It's a relationship around each category. If we're talking about mindset is a relationship around relationships, around money, around ourself, around our health. And she was talking about how the mindset part about being kindergarten level. So getting back to your question is a lot of the way that people are more receptive with information that is being learned the first time is by literally going back to the foundation of bringing things back into a kindergarten aspect. Because if you can explain things in a very simple format and somebody can understand it in a very kindergarten way, they're more likely to make the necessary changes because it's simple. It's easy. So the more simple you can make something, the easier. I don't use the word kindergarten because some people take offense to it, but I'll go into the Apple store and the Mac store. I'll be like, listen, treat me like a kindergartner.
When I was learning how to write copy, my mentor used to tell me that write it to a 4th grade level. And I happen to have a 4th grader in the house and she would read my copy back to me.
Amazing. Yeah. If kids can understand something and they're excited about it, that they're receptive, that means that it's most likely going to be impactful for somebody else. So it's almost like I do go back into inner child work. So I do treat everybody and even myself just like a little kid. So they say be childlike, not childish, right? It's a saying, something like that.
Okay. So what do you mean by this intrinsic and extrinsic goals? Let's talk about that because I think somebody that's not familiar with it would think that's a little woo-woo-y.
Of it like exit, extrinsic. Exit is like outside of ourselves, intrinsic inside. I struggled with being a high-end achieving, fulfilled goal setter. So a lot of high-end achievers are people who are striving to really do amazing things in the world, like yourself. Have you ever, let me ask you, Matt, have you ever made a huge checklist and marked everything off and then you still felt unfulfilled?
Absolutely.
Okay. So those are extrinsic goals. Extrinsic goals, we are more outcome goals. They're goals based on, I think if I buy a yacht or I go buy a whole new outfit or I go and do all this work or I go and, reach X amount of dollars in business, I will then have peace. I will then feel fulfillment. Yeah. So an intrinsic goal is peace. It is fulfillment. Those are feeling goals. And a lot of people think they are wooey, but if you're clear on how you want to feel and you start to embrace it now in the now, how can I find peace today? How can I find fulfillment today? You're going to remember happiness is a byproduct of fulfillment. Everybody thinks their aim is happiness. It's actually fulfillment. So if intrinsic goals are getting to the core of and I don't like to say, because it doesn't work for me, I'm probably one of the most rebellious person I've ever met or anybody else ever met, but they don't think it because I seem but it's because I know this stuff. I'm like, okay, I'm resisting because I don't understand. Some people know, they say, know thyself, right? I also believe in God. I believe in Christ consciousness. I'm like, that's my beliefs. I don't push it on anybody, but it's the same concept. Like when you know better, you don't always do better, but it's understanding, yourself really when it comes down to all this stuff.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm 54 now, right? I remember. Woo! Yeah. Rock on, baby.
54 years of life experience.
That's what all the gray hairs are. Wisdom. Yeah. I look at my 30-year-old self and I had jet black hair and no beard. And I think, wow, we didn't know jack. But it's interesting because, it's interesting now having kids, right? So my 24-year-old son is a carbon copy of me, and he is very driven for the material success. And I keep telling him, brother, it doesn't matter. The size of the house, it doesn't matter. The car, it doesn't matter. What matters is the fulfillment that you feel, like as you're saying, the intrinsic, how that feels inside. Because I've accomplished a lot of those things, checked a lot of those things off, and you get done and you're like, yeah, I don't know if you remember the movie Wall Street with Bud Fox, the first one, and he has everything. And he gets done. He's making the millions. He's trading all this money. He has Daryl Hannah as the girlfriend. This is when Daryl Hannah was uber hot. And he goes, is this all there is? Right. And I think a lot of people chase for something, but then they get there and they're like, what the hell is this? There's got to be something more. Right. And that's really what you're talking about. Is that is the intrinsic, the inside part? Is that, or am I missing it?
Well, I feel that a lot of people, and I'm not like going against what you're saying, but I kind of am at the same time. I actually am. I believe we can have it all, but we have to be clear on why we want what we want. Do you love the water, or are you just getting a boat for like status purposes? Or do you really do enjoy the water and you're all about family and all about community, and you want to have that, to invite that, as long as you understand what you want and then you have the experiences. Because here's one thing, Matt, we don't truly know until we have an experience. Yep. Knowledge stems from experience, not assumption. So I believe that we can have it all, because it's nice that you can have nice things and enjoy pleasurable things, so you can maybe feel abundant or you can feel wealthy, as long as you're enjoying it and you know that it does bring you happiness, but it doesn't define who you are. Because be that clear, what you do and what you have is not who you are. It's just what you have and what you do.
Yeah, and I think that trips up a lot of people, and especially my clients, doctors, because they're trained that it's not about the money, it's about saving of the people, right? It's about treating the person. So is that what you say to people that are struggling with this concept of that they're worthy, or it's okay to make serious money and have all these things?
Well, there's so many layers to these things when you're dealing with subconscious stuff, because it all comes back to programming, where's programming learned in the fundamental phases of life, right? As child.
When we have no input and choice as to what we're learning. Yeah, that's my favorite.
Yeah. So a lot of it is, it's programming. It's also a belief. So what is a belief? A belief is just a statement that's repeated over and over and over again. And then life is a boomerang. So of course, life gives us what we constantly believe, but belief and truth are not the same thing. So getting back to your question, cycling back, is we start with number one, same thing, building out structure. So if somebody feels like they can go down that route, I don't talk about this stuff all in one. You can't overload people with things. You have to give them very simple, easy things. Well, actually, simplicity isn't easy.
No, simplicity is very hard, but it's incredible.
It's not the same thing. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But you just literally, one thing that I was just having a conversation with one of my clients this morning, it's 1% content. So in a coaching session or in a course that you take or a book that you read or an article or this podcast that you're listening to, that's 1% of your change and transformation. The 99% of change and transformation is the implementation and the integration of the content and the material that you've learned. So getting back to that is giving them the structure and the system of first starting with the physical, learning how to take care of self. And then if there's any blockages or resistance of why I know what to do, but I'm just not doing it, because that's AKA resistance, making sure we get through all those subconscious blocks, and then getting into the mental, the emotional, some shadow work stuff, like all these other things, childhood, stuff, healing stuff, and then getting deeper into, then they can be more awake and aware of everything else. It's a process. It's like a layer. It's like an onion. You peel back layer by layer. So
in our work that we do with our clients, you and I both, people come to us because I find that people want the magic steps, and really it's about the internal transformation, because, I can teach anybody the steps, right? How do you become a millionaire, or how do you lose weight? Simple, eat less, move more, right? Burn more calories than you intake. Ta-da! Pretty straightforward.
Kind of, and I can say from experience, because I had food addiction and I was 60 pounds heavier. So everybody says it's that easy, but it's not.
Because of what you just discussed. Exactly.
Yeah. The relationship around it, the beliefs around it, using it as a coping mechanism, because that's also, you're getting into stimulation and addiction. And then if you get into that F-it mindset, the lowest emotional state is discouragement. And then I can also put it hand by hand with boredom, because a lot of people do a lot of self-destructive things in a boredom state of energy just to create a natural high of stimulation. But that's like a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. Yeah, this is great. Okay, so let's talk then about this. You also, which I love this, you start to talk about blood type and epigenetics and cultural background and food allergies and food sensitivity and all of these things, which I know my doctors are going to totally geek out on, right? So how did you figure this out? Like, are you...
Some of them attack me too, but that's okay. I'm here for it all.
Yeah, I don't care. If I'm not getting attacked, then I'm not poking enough bears. You know what I mean?
I'm here for it all. I'm here for the results, and this stuff works. Period. Okay. So.
Yeah. So how did you start to figure some of this out? Because, I think there's a lot of things in there that are, people don't realize that there's that underlying stuff underneath under the skin that's really dragging them into that place.
So you're speaking more in regards to nutrition, right?
Yes.
And food. Okay. So what I like to call it is a nutrient roadmap, because words carry power. And I do believe I personally have had many experiences with body. I've been an athlete. I played 9 years of ice hockey. I've been a bikini competitor. I've done 2 bikini competitions. I've also had food addictions of binge eating disorder. I've been anorexic. Like, I've been at the spectrum, let me say. So
you're a woman of extremes. Huh? There's like no fifth. It's only fifth gear with you, huh, Tanya?
Yeah. I mean, I was, and sometimes I have it, but that's like, when getting back to the very first question you asked, is what got me in the line of work, is I needed to figure out how to become my greatest ally versus my greatest enemy. I needed to learn how to become an asset to myself versus a liability. There was no other motive, but really just this space of self-mastery. And nutrition, I've done work with Dr. Joe Dispenza. I've taken his courses, and I'm actually going to another event in August for meditation. And that's another thing, like, meditation, everybody makes it sound so simple. It's really not. It's not easy. Yeah. It's like spiritual exercise, you got to show up for it every day. So on this journey of figuring out how to heal my body, and when we talked about, you can have it all. I wanted an amazing, beautiful body, because why not? If we can, then why not? But I also wanted to feel free of it. I didn't want to have body image dysmorphia. I didn't want to be OCD with food and measure out my macros and calorie counting, because I'd done all that, and I felt more insecure. I felt more disconnected, and I felt more imprisoned than I ever had in my life, even though on the outside I looked really, really healthy. I was literally miserable inside. So during the journey of figuring it out, I realized, and also my background is personal training and nutrition. So I had traveled, and I had worked with some of the best and the pioneers in the industry, and had taken little bits and pieces. And then, of course, remember, integration and implementation had worked. Then I had taught more the blueprint, not the what's, to my clients and students, and it worked. And it's kind of like chemistry. You have a formula, you test it out, and it's the same results. You're like, okay, I think I have something here. So I realized it wasn't just about the food, because I would have inflammation. I was doing all these blood allergy tests, and then I paired it side by side when I started studying, like, over 10, maybe 12 years ago, with the blood type diet, of how it impacts gut health and inflammation, which impacts our pineal gland. We're talking about the pineal gland and it being crystallized. What does it do? It dumbs us down, and it disconnects us from higher consciousness. So I was like, no, I don't want that. Right. I don't want that outcome. So how do I maximize and open it up and expand and become my best self? And then I was like, wait a second, what's epigenetics? I started learning about epigenetics. And I do believe that when you ask for answers and when you pray for them, and God knows that you're really searching from truth, and you're a truth seeker, little hidden messages and information, whether it being like a book, will pop out. And then you intuitively feel called to go read it. Like little things like that, pieces just start adding, or you meet somebody and you want to learn from them, and you invest in their courses and their programs, and you go study them, and you go to conferences. So that's kind of how the path led. And the intention was always there. I want to know truth. I want to be free. Like going back to the intrinsic goals. What do I truly want? I want to feel healthy and strong AF, exclamation point. And so I realized nutrition wasn't just parallel or even a perpendicular, answer. It was more of if we have 4 roads, let's say, of our blood types, A, A, B, O, B. each road, as you know, roads don't just have one way. They have then streets that go create perpendicular lines. So this then, if you know what blood type you are, do you know what blood type you are, Matt?
I should know this. What's one of the most common? Oh, I have no idea. Oh.
Everybody says that. They're like, I'm the most
I have no idea what I am. I should know this, but I don't.
All right. Well, I'll use me for an example. I'm A.
Okay.
So the positive negative when it comes to nutrition isn't really a big factor. So I'm A. So I now can eliminate the other three. But if I'm on this road and I've got all these intersections, now I have to deal with an intersection is epigenetics. What is my belief around food? Do I believe this food's going to make me fat? Do I believe this food's going to make me healthy? Do I believe this food's going to make me sick? Do I believe this food's going to poison me? Like that's real stuff because that stresses us out. And what does stress do? Stress creates inflammation, cortisol. So then I figured that out. Then you're like, okay, well, now I need a food cycle because if I eat the same thing over and over and over again, then I'm going to get bored of it. And what's that going to do? That's going to stress me out.
Right.
It's going to create an intolerance. My body's going to reject it. So then I need to eat on the right timing because if I eat too late, it's going to impact my digestion. It's going to stress out my digestion. So then you have all these different roads. And then within roads, you've got plazas, cultural background. How are you brought up? Food memory and attachments. Like you have all these different things. Sorry, I know I'm getting like taking up all this time talking about this, but I'm really excited.
Yeah.
I get excited because people don't talk about it because they don't know about it. And then they wonder why they're suffering and nobody can help them.
Yeah.
And they think there's something wrong with them. And there's nothing wrong with you. It's just you've got all these, it's not just one road. You've got all these other things now to work on or to understand and then to integrate and implement.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. I mean, I know I'm sure you'll have a few responsive, positive and negative to what, because one thing about my client base, man, and my listeners, they have a belief system and man, they are all in, which is really cool. As I always tell them, I am treatment agnostic. If I'm not a doctor, I really am in no place I know what works for me. So, okay. So you work with people and you have a 90-day Mastermind elite program coming up. And that's what you cover is this kind of stuff. Is that correct?
Yeah. Mastermind Elite. I'm so excited. I just kind of launched it because a lot of people were asking me about small groups because I just did one-on-one coaching and then I had like online pre-recorded courses and a few ebooks, but I didn't really have any groups. So I was like, you know what? I'll put it out there like organically. I'm running a small group, Mastermind Elite. It was so successful. And it actually, I felt so much fulfillment and joy working with a small group of 10 because I'm only taking on 10. That's like the magic number for me. Everybody knows like what they can handle with still giving people quality and allowing people to feel intimate, supported, and taken care of. So 10 was the magic number. And it was so amazing that I'm going to be launching another one June 25th. And we broke it into 90 days because 90 days is about a good amount of time to give somebody the structure and all the information they need to then set them up for success, where they can then take the rest of the, other quarters of the year and integrate and implement into their life. So yeah, we break it into 3 phases and we cover a lot of stuff. I'm excited. A lot of things
that we were just covering here. You have all these different kind of segments. Yep.
Times 10.
I'm sure. And if people want to find out more about this, where do they go? How do they find out about it?
Oh, yeah. So great question. Well, first off, I love giving free things away. If you would like to get an idea besides just hearing me yap, actually have like a style of how I teach.
Is that what this was? This was yapping instead of a podcast?
This is me yapping.
Yapping? Never knew that. I don't think of you as a yapping.
If you guys really just want to like go into it for free, I love giving free things. I'm for it. You can go to Tayna C. Oliver, TanyAoliver.com/10 steps. And there is a free 10-step like masterclass I created. But if you like are all in, like you said, then I'm on Instagram at Tanya, TanyAC Oliver, Oliver. You can find me there. Just send me a message. Just say you're on the podcast or put Matt's name in there and I'll make sure you get taken care of. But we do start. And right now we're more than half full. So I have like maybe about 3 slots open, but we have other programs available too if it's not a good fit for right now.
Awesome. Well, look, Tanya, I really appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate you being so open about your challenges and what you've overcome. this is the hard, gritty work that people don't want to really take a look at, but in my view is the most important to your success. And when I can get a client who has these kind of breakthroughs that you're talking about, the sky's the limit. You know,
and I do have to say, Matt, just to make people feel like good about themselves, because if they are one and they have not had success, like I used to be that person. And I feel that, and I said this on another podcast I did, I was like, I believe in people. I just believe that there are a lot of false presenters that give a lot of misinformation that really confuse people, that lead to heavy discouragement. And then you lose belief in your ability to succeed. And so I feel that more people like yourself, like putting the right information out there and truth, and then even me, like putting information and providing programs and services that can actually support and hold space for people. Just know that keep trying, don't give up. There is somebody for you, and you will win. You will overcome if the desire is there, but you can never give up. You can never quit on yourself. The moment you quit, you're not living anymore.
It's like dating.
You have to live on purpose.
It's like dating. Just because the last boyfriend or girlfriend was a jerk doesn't mean the next one's not going to be awesome. You never know.
Well, you might need to work on yourself for a little bit and know that you were an active participant and you attracted that. So
yes.
I can also have a conversation on that whole thing too. We could do a whole other podcast.
We ain't got enough time for that one. Look, I was married for 25 years. I spent a fortune on therapy and it still didn't stick. So there you go. All right, everybody, check her out. She's Tayna, Oliver.com. Check her out online. Tanya, thanks so much for coming. Always enjoy talking with you. Glad we met in Miami. Love those dance meetings. All right, everybody, this is Matt with the Practice Profit System. Remember, stay classy. See y'all.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked this episode, take a moment and share it with your fellow medical professionals, or post a positive comment and rate it on wherever you just listened. Now, don't forget, you can get a copy of my book, The Anatomy of a Seven-Figure Medical Practice, for free. Just pay $7.95 in shipping and handling. Plus, you'll get over $1,197 in free bonus material. Simply go to srpmedicalmarketing.com/book. That's srpmedicalmarketing.com/book. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.